Hey Bible lovers, I'm Tim Nichols and I'm here to bring you your Nichols Worth. Today from Schuyler, we're going to be reviewing the King James and the ESV Treveris, just to give kind of a couple quick comparisons and show you some details that you may want to see before you purchase your own. So let's first start with the King James. The King James Treveris, as you can tell, has a beautiful spine. Now this one has a similar problem that the ESV Treveris has that I'll kind of show you in a minute, but that has the kind of ridge that you can see on the spine. It's definitely worse on the Treveris, and I'll explain to you kind of what happened there. So this is a full yap. So let me first give a couple criticisms. Okay, with all of Schuyler's full yap Bibles, what they do is they fail to account for the yap. I love the fact that they do the tool line that kind of shows you the size of the block, and then that yap when it's trained. Neither of these yaps are very well trained because I haven't taken the time to do it. What happens is when you don't account for that yap, once it gets trained, like let's just say this one's trained, that Jerusalem cross is going to look off-centered. So one thing I wish they would do is I wish they would center it according to the tool line rather than according to the edge of the leather here. Something just doesn't look right about that when that Jerusalem cross is off-center. There's some examples of some that don't have the yap right here, and you can see they're a little more centered, and I think that looks quite a bit better. Even with the NASB full yap, it's off whenever you account for the yap. I wish they would have accounted for that. Now let's look at the spine. On the ESV, again, it is far worse, and what happens is they create an Oxford hollow, and they take this material, because if you don't create an Oxford hollow, this spine can give, and then when you open it, what will happen is it'll concave, and it'll create this ugly crease in your spine. So this is a good thing that this has been reinforced with that Oxford hollow. But there was a mistake in the measurement, because what's supposed to happen with an Oxford hollow is they take the material and go all the way to each edge or each hinge, and it creates that seamless look like you see in this one, and this one, and this one. So no issues with these. And what can be a little bit frustrating with evangelical Bibles is sometimes whenever something didn't go right, they just kind of act like it's normal. Okay, this isn't normal. This is a mistake in the measurements. Now, it's not detrimental. It's not going to cause any problems. In fact, over time, that material is probably going to flatten out and it's going to go away. But this was a mismeasurement by Royal Youngblood. But anyhow, ultimately, not a big deal. Now, let's take a look at the layout. This is what makes the Treveris very interesting. So you have, number one, you have your drop caps. I love this red liner. I think that's one thing that sets Schuyler Bibles apart, is their willingness to have accent liners. These corners are not amazing. They're okay. Sometimes with full yap Bibles, those corners can be a little tricky. So what makes the Treveris different than many other layouts is it's a reader's format, and all your verses in the poetic settings and in the reading settings or the paragraph settings are going to be on the edge of the page. In your poetic settings, this isn't going to be so much of an issue, because let's get into some poetry. Once you get into your poetry, it's pretty much laid out verse by verse. So your verse is going to start, your verse is going to start, your verse is going to start. This is actually a common practice to have the verses on the edge of the page. But when you get into a reader setting, that's when it gets a little more complicated and hard to understand where you are. You can't have everything when you want a reader's layout. If you want the verses out of the way and you want them on the edge of the page, then sometimes you're going to have difficulty finding that next verse. So what they've done is they've tried to lay it out to where the next capital letter is where the next verse starts. Sometimes a verse starts in the middle of a sentence. That makes it a little more complicated and a little more hard to find your verse. I absolutely love the drop caps. These drop caps are just beautiful. So this is really a nice layout. 3 super beautiful Beresford ribbons, the perimeter gold. I mean, this thing is just gorgeous. Then when you get into the New Testament, now this is interesting. The King James has a red letter. That red letter is pretty nice. It's nice and dark, but I do think that's a lot of red. Because you think about, you got the red art gilding, you got the red liner, you got the red drop caps, you got the red verse and chapter references, you have your red subheadings, which are at the top of the page so they don't interrupt your reading experience, and then you have the red letters. That's a lot of red. So what I really prefer is what they did with the ESV Treveris, and that is they just went ahead and they skipped the red letters. There's no red letters. Also, a really interesting thing about this is in the New Testament, when there's poetry, they also laid it out poetically. So you have that advantage of knowing exactly where all your poetry is. Something else that they did that you may want to take a look at is they added a concordance in the back. I don't know exactly why you need a concordance in a reading Bible, especially one where the verses aren't always super easy to find, but it is there. And unlike the Quintel, this has been a major gripe with me and Schuyler, is like with the ESV Quintel. All right, when you get to the concordance, look at that. It's pitifully small, almost not even usable. So I do love that in the ESV Treveris, they used a double column and it is a larger concordance. With the King James, when you get to the back to the concordance, they're back to that tiny little 3-column, almost useless concordance. Here's what I wish they would do. Okay, this is a 10-point font, just in case I forgot to mention that in both of these Bibles. What I wish they would have done is I wish they would have just gotten rid of this extra stuff in the back, made this font maybe into an 11 and give you more of that larger print, or just go ahead and go without, because when you consider the amount of paper used, I mean, it's not a lot, but it would make your Bible about this much thinner. So it's not a whole lot thinner, but it may make quite a bit of a difference. So 28 GSM French Indo-Opaque paper, line matched, really nice. Not a whole lot to complain about other than the fact that the spines kind of got goobered up and they don't center that Jerusalem cross according to the Yap. Other than that, it's a very unique and very beautiful layout. Schuyler always does amazing work. But anyhow, there you have it. Keep calm. Jesus on this, your Nicholas Worth.